Hi, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm excellent, Anna. How are you?
I am having a wonderful day here in Saratoga Springs. Guys, back in action for part two of Sarah D'Angelo and my contract tips and tricks. So, really excited to be here today, Sarah. If y'all haven't watched part one, you better check it out. Because there's some great stuff there and nuggets. So, Sarah, why don't you just tell our new viewers who you are and what your gig is?
I'm Sarah D'Angelo. I am with Keller Williams Capital District. Like many of you watching this, I sell real estate, and also I work with our brokerage as kind of their broker on call or broker trainer. So I teach all of our agents how to write contracts. And that's what we're here today to not only talk about how to write contracts, to talk about how to write contracts that your loan officer is going to love when they come across her desk.
Yay! Well,
Yeah.
just so everybody knows, this is not just about making my life better. It's about making the attorney's life better, your client's life better, and ultimately you as the agent's life better, because guess what happens when your lender can do their job? We get it cleared to closes faster. So there we go.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
And there's less running around, and I'll let you pull up the contract while I'm saying this, that there's less running around getting corrections. And so while you're pulling that up, I know for me, sometimes I work with people who are technologically challenged, who might be older and who may need me to put the contract on paper in front of their face with a pen in their hand. And so when you have to make corrections, that's a lot of time to bring the corrected contract back when you've already been there to sign the original one.
Agreed. Agreed.
So we were talking about the last one ended at paragraph 8, other terms, and what you put in other terms. And I just thought that it was worth revisiting this because other terms is 4 lines, which means there's not a lot of space here. And we have this beauty of a document, which I think you have pulled up already as well. And maybe we can flip right over and share that real quick. And that document is called a blank addendum. And so if you scroll down, this is the beauty of the blank addendum. It is
so many lines.
So it's a blank space. You can write whatever you want. So obviously you're going to make sure that you attach it to the property by writing the buyer and the seller's name in the property. And then guys, what we're not going to do, because we're not going to write addendum in paragraph 22 as one of the attached documents, because when you do, that addendum must go to the loan officer. And this is where you can put all of the things, like they're going to leave the ping pong table and the furniture in the guest bedroom and the gas grill. Oh, and also the buyer is definitely bringing money to the table if there's an appraisal gap, even though this is an FHA loan. And by the way, they're going to do all of the repairs that are necessary for a VA loan. Guys, these are all things you cannot tell your bank.
Right.
And so where you put them is the blank addendum, and they do not fit on 4 lines.
And you do not add the blank addendum to line 22. What are we going to do? Like we said last time, attorney approval, right, Sarah?
Attorney approval. You make sure you send that over to the attorneys. And you make sure that you write right in your email to the attorneys. And what I personally like to do is I like to write that line and then I highlight it in the email so that they cannot miss it. And I say, there is a blank addendum that has not been incorporated in paragraph 22. I need you to incorporate it in the contract through attorney review.
Yes. And guess what? We don't get attorney approval letters as lenders. So all of a sudden,
you send the attorney approval letter to the lender.
Yes,
my word.
Please do not. To be fair, out of the things that I see that I'm like, why would you do that? Sending the attorney approval letter doesn't happen very regularly, but people forwarding every single inspection going along with the house happens all the time. So don't send inspections, don't send attorney approval letters, but do send all addenda that are listed in this contract. If it is listed, we will want it. So let's go back up here then, Sarah. And since we just kind of harped on our line item 8 about the blank addendum, wrapping it into your attorney approval instead of including it with the list of addenda that's going to go to your lender. Do you have anything that you want to talk about line item number 9 before we start moving down the list?
So for line item number 9, this is an interesting thing, and I think we'll throw this out there. Y'all, everything is negotiable. So there is what is called standards or traditions of a area. In our area, it's done county by county. So traditionally, in certain counties, sellers pay for title or buyers pay for title, and yet everything is negotiable. An interesting thing is, Anna, you remember you financed the house that I purchased up north in Warren County. Warren County is a seller paid title county. When I made my offer, I offered that I would pay for title. Title is not that expensive, y'all. It felt like a huge win to the seller. Right. So that's something that it is negotiable. That being said, make sure that you check the correct box that you actually want and know that the attorneys will default to the traditions of the county. So that if you want it to be different, you need to let them know that was part of our offer. It was not an error on my part.
Absolutely. And as a KW agent, do you guys have a list of all of the traditions for the localities here?
Yeah, we do. We have a internal Facebook group. Yep. And inside that group, there is a list that says who pays title.
Nice.
And yeah, so we keep that list, and that's accessible at any time inside of our Facebook group.
Beautiful. Good to know. Awesome. So anything else that we need to talk about with line item 9? That's not usually one that affects, our financing or delays anything on the financing side. So I don't have anything to really comment there.
Yeah, I think, guys, you really want to, as an agent, be choosing 40-year abstracted title, tax search, or any continuation thereof. And then if the attorneys need to switch it to a fee title insurance policy for whatever reason, that should just be handled through the attorneys. And otherwise, the only other thing that I would say here is just notice that inside of the contract, if the sellers have a survey or title insurance policy information, they need to provide it. Now, sellers lose this stuff all the time, so they may not actually know where it is and can't provide it because they don't physically have it. The purchaser, if the seller's providing a title, and there are some banks and some properties where there needs to be an update of the survey. Inside of the contract, it states that the purchaser is going to pay the cost of updating the survey.
Typically in mortgage financing, we are not asking for a survey unless it's new construction or property lines are changing or anything of that nature. I will say sometimes your specialty products like State of New York, mortgage, so Sunny Mae, they may ask for a survey. So, if the lender's asking for it, it's usually not because they really want to bug you for more stuff. They probably need it for some reason. So, but it's not typically something we pull.
It's not common.
No,
it's not common.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And then let's see here. We keep going on to line item 10. This again, not something that is huge for on the lending side. So I don't know if you have anything you want to let us know.
On the real estate side, you want to make sure that you're putting what the purpose of the property is. And I have been teaching to default to unit at this point. So for the purpose of single unit residential, and where this really comes into play, guys, is if you are buying a multi-unit property, I'm sure that every single landlord that you guys have ever worked with has been amazing and brilliant and wildly ethical, but you might be surprised to find out that there are some unethical landlords out there, and they may have an illegal unit. And so you bring a buyer to the property and you're doing the math on a 5-unit, but turns out it's an illegal 5th unit. So you really have a 4-unit property. You have to put, for the purpose of, do not put multi-unit property, put 4-unit, 5-unit, 3-unit, whatever it is you believe you're buying. That actually could affect financing.
Yes, it could. I've never had any issues come up with that, but hey, I'm sure I will now. So now that I said that out loud, in the 1,000 or so loans that I've done, not had it come up as an issue. However, there's always a first time. So good to know. Good to know. Okay. And then deed, anything, again, this isn't something that comes up as an issue. So I'll let you kind of talk to 11, Sarah.
Yeah. Warranty deed with lien covenants, the best kind of deed that you can get in New York State. And so personally, I just leave it like that. I put a line. You always want to like put a line through any blank line. You can't just leave a blank line and it's empty. So if you're not going to use it, put a line through it. So I just put a line through that. The deed that the sellers have is what is going to transfer to the buyers. And so anything other than a warranty deed with lien covenant, I want the attorney to be having a conversation with my purchaser to let them know what kind of deed they're getting and what that means for them.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. Line item 12. I can definitely talk about this one. This one comes up in the land of mortgage. Basically, line item 12 is stating that the seller is going to pay the seller's portion of the transfer tax. And what a lot of people don't realize about transfer tax in New York, which is just a nice name for saying New York State mortgage tax, or like this retail sales tax on getting a mortgage in New York. Okay. So there's the transfer tax. There's two pieces. There's seller paid transfer tax. And a lot of people get that confused with also there's buyer paid transfer tax. And the two are calculated differently. So your seller transfer tax is typically $4 per thousand on the purchase price, whereas your buyer or borrower's transfer tax is a percentage of the loan amount. So like Albany County's 1%, Saratoga County's 0.75%. But this line basically binds the seller to paying that transfer tax. The only time that the seller wouldn't be paying the transfer tax is if the seller is not a real person, or it's put in the contract that the seller is not paying a transfer tax. So like new construction, usually the buyer pays the seller transfer tax, or if it's bank owned property, the buyer may pay the seller's transfer tax. The only other thing in there that we can note, the mansion tax or luxury tax, if the home is more than $1 million, then your buyer, would be paying that New York State mansion tax there. Anything real estate related there, Sarah?
I think one thing that we should maybe touch on is, because someday, Anna, they'll come back. And that is when you have a concession on a loan.
Oh, what do you mean?
Yeah. So if a buyer was, say, using an FHA loan, and let's say that they were buying the house for $200,000 and they're going to utilize 6% because they have the ability, we'll say the taxes are high enough, they can utilize all 6%, right? Yeah. So that's going to be $12,000 in transfer or in concessions.
Yes.
And so the seller is actually going to net 188.
Yep. 188.
On that. Did I do that math correctly?
On
all right. So
yep.
Typically what will happen is the lawyers will annotate in the contract that the seller will be responsible for the transfer tax on 188, which is $752. And that the buyer is going to be responsible for the transfer tax on the $12,000. That's the buyer's benefit. And so that's going to be an additional $48 to them.
Yes. Got you. All right. Beautiful. Good to know. Yes. Seller concessions. What are those? Will they ever get them again? Will they happen again?
I figured I'd mention it. They might come back someday.
Yes, they will. They'll be back someday. So beautiful. Great point. Okay. Line item 13. Again, this isn't something that comes up in financing regularly. A problem paragraph, if you will, in financing. So I don't know if you have anything that we wanted to chat about line item 13.
No, I just think this is important, guys. The biggest piece that buyers, agents and sellers agents need to worry about inside of this is you need to make sure that you are getting that final water reading and that you're getting it to the attorneys on time. Know that most municipalities since COVID, most of them have gone online. Most of them require 48 hours notice. Some of them still let us read the meter, but it is not always true that they will let us read the meter. And then for fuel, make sure that if there is fuel on site, if there is oil or if there is propane, that the listing agent, it's your responsibility to tell the seller they need to get the reading. From a buyer's agent perspective, like this could hold up your closing, because trust me, if that reading is not done at the table, the sellers will sit there and not sign for the closing because they want their money for their oil and their propane, because that's expensive.
Yes.
So
Exactly. Awesome. Line item 14, again, not another hot spot in the land of financing, but I don't know if you want to talk to final inspection.
Always do a final walkthrough. Like there should never be a reason to not do a final walkthrough. Always do a final walkthrough, and the client should be doing the final walkthrough. The agent should not be doing the final walkthrough on behalf of the client. So
is that a thing? Really?
Yes, there have definitely been situations where I have heard of that the client is unable to make it to the final walkthrough, so that the agent does it in lieu of the client doing it. So I've definitely heard about this happening. So guys, whether you are a broker yourself or if your license is affiliated with a brokerage, trust me when I tell you that your broker is going to be super pleased with the advice that I am giving you right now.
Yes.
Have your client do that final walkthrough. Now, obviously you need to be with your clients, right? Because that house still belongs to the seller. So you do need to accompany them, and they should be the ones that are doing it and really looking at and signing off on everything inside the house, at least mentally signing off on everything inside the house. Personally, I like to do them like right before closing.
Yep, exactly. That, I mean, the majority of my clients, I usually call clients. I'm having deja vu from doing this recording last month. I'm having like really bad deja vu right now, Sarah. Anyway, but a lot of times I'll be calling the clients a few hours before closing, and it feels like 7 times out of 10, I catch them at the final walkthrough. So it's just being done right before closing. So awesome. All right, let's talk about line item 15. This is a hot pocket here in New York. I'll let you talk to it first before I give my.
I know that it's like a New York thing as much as it is like a capital region thing, although it definitely goes down into the city. I'm not quite positive if Western New York operates in the exact same way, but let me just tell you that 4 years ago, I had a buyer client who was a first-time home buyer, and her parents literally bought plane tickets from California to come here to help her move because of the closing date on the contract, even though I must have explained to her no less than 30 times that is not your closing date. Yeah. So they were very upset with me and wanted me to buy them plane tickets.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, that is,
we, with how we explain it to folks, we say it's an on or about date, like a due date of, pregnancy or whatever, that it's not likely to be your closing date and that it's an estimated closing date. But it's so hard for folks, especially for folks that have purchased in, say, Florida or really pretty much anywhere else. To not focus on that date. When we're doing the mortgage financing, we do shoot to have the loan cleared to close as soon as possible. So that way scheduling can happen as soon as possible. But also please note, guys, your lender doesn't schedule the closing here in New York. So
also your real estate agent does not schedule the closing.
Correct. Neither of us do it. The bank attorney typically coordinates with the seller and buyer attorney to schedule that. But I wish that we could change this paragraph to make it say estimated date for the state, because it's a little turkey is what it is, Sarah. Because this is recording and going on YouTube. I'm not going to say what I really think it is, but as is. So that's an estimated date, guys. Anything else we need to cover there on 15? All right, great. Well, I don't know anything really about line item 16. I do know that when you send, guys, this is a big one. When you send a copy of the contract to the lender, please include all addenda. We've already talked on that, but also please.
It's listed in paragraph 22.
Correct. Listed in paragraph 22, the ones I want to know about. Please also include, if you have them, copies of the tax bills. That helps us to speed things along. And
the actual tax bills, not the CRS report.
Yes, the actual bills.
Tax bills.
And if possible, a copy of the EMD, the deposit check, would be magical, because we need all those things every time on every single file. So if you can just send them to me as a little batch, I can get the loan approved faster, which means we'll get title ordered faster and we'll close faster and be asking you for less stuff. We will need all of that stuff every time. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it on 16 for me.
So the thing that I want to point out about paragraph 16 is that there's a lot of thought around the wording in the release of the deposit. But the reality is that a deposit is held by the listing broker in their escrow account. Just because the listing broker is holding the deposit, they're not holding it as a listing broker. They're holding it as an escrow agent. So they cannot make decisions on the disbursement of that escrow. If the transaction cancels for any reason, there has to be a cancellation and release for the distribution of that escrow deposit. That's what directs the distribution of the escrow deposit. That said, there does not have to be a cancellation and release for somebody else to buy the house. There just has to be an attorney cancellation letter on file showing that the buyer has canceled this contract. That cancellation and release releases the liability from the contract. So it takes away the seller's right to pursue breach or the buyer's right to pursue breach. It does not hold the seller up from transferring.
I feel like that's a common mistake. I don't know if mistake's the right word, but a common thing that a lot of
misunderstanding.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Out there that we have to have a cancellation and release to sell the house again, which good to know. Yeah. Okay.
And then I'll say one more thing too, that very last paragraph, just in case you guys are ever involved in something like this. So very last paragraph says, like, if both parties aren't going to sign it because one of them wants to sue the other or whatever, the brokerage can choose to commence an interpleader action. Commencing an interpleader action, the deposit money, it's going to cost the brokerage money. And the funds from the deposit are going to go to cover that interpleader action first before they get paid to anyone. And just so you know, the commencement of an interpleader action between hiring the attorneys and filing the paperwork and the filing fees, it runs about $2,500. So if the deposit is like $3,000, there's only going to be $500 of it left. So maybe people should just talk it out.
Yes.
Figure it out.
Talk it out. I like that. All right, Sarah, this is definitely more your wheelhouse. Time period of offer. How strict is this?
This is one of those things that could be strict it could be like a technicality that is utilized later on in the transaction. And so you want to make sure that this is covered. But this is the thing, right? The time period of the offer is the timeline of which the buyer is putting forth the offer to the seller. If it's not accepted by the seller prior to the time on the contract, the offer becomes null and void. So if the seller actually signs it after this time frame has passed, the seller is signing a legally invalid contract. The attorneys can handle this in attorney review, but just know, like, this is a technicality that is hanging out there. Mm-hmm. And so even if they don't handle it in attorney review, and let's say we're 6 days in and a really wildly better offer comes along and the seller wants to take it, and that offer was expired at the time that the seller signed it and it was never handled in attorney review, there's not a contract in place. I will also say that, and this has been really big right now, and this is because, I give it to all the agents out there working with buyers. You are working your tails off. You are showing them up a zillion houses. You are writing 97 million offers until finally that one clicks. Yeah. And I give it to all you agents out there who are listing properties, because you are fielding all of those offers and all of those phone calls and all of those text messages and all of those questions and making spreadsheets and presenting them to the sellers. And so, y'all, if it says 5:00 today is the time in which this offer becomes null and void by the buyer, what it does not say is that the listing agent needs to call me by 5:00.
Yes.
It does not say that.
Yes. Right.
And in fact, though I don't personally approve of this, agents are not required to respond to offers, period. Agents are only required to present the offer to their seller.
Not to respond. So for all those people on Facebook complaining about no response, it would be nice to get a response, but it's not required.
I mean, I feel like it's the bare minimum of professional standards. And trust me, we're all judging you, but you're not required to respond. But we know who you are.
We know. Okay, great. So definitely not a part where I'm involved in. So line item 18, if you want to talk to that, Sarah, for our folks out there that are watching intently, bated breath.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those spaces, right? Because I mean, I love what I do. And I don't do it as volunteer work. I also love the volunteer work that I do. I do not expect to get paid for that.
Right.
So this is my career and I do expect to get paid for the job that I do. And so purchaser and seller agree that, and you're going to put your brokerage, right? So I would put Keller Williams Capital District and blank. That's where the buyer's agent puts their brokerage name in there.
Yep.
Now the seller agrees to pay the listing brokerage. The commission is set forth in the listing agreement. And the purchaser agrees to pay the broker's commission as set forth in the buyer broker agreement. Now, how many of y'all do buyer broker agreements? If you did not raise your hand in that moment, my suggestion to you is to get started learning about them and get started using them. Because if you are unaware, there is a lawsuit going on right now where the Department of Justice is suing NAR, and actually, I think like some people sued some brokerages, and then the Department of Justice got involved. And the judges in 2 of those cases granted class action status. So what that means is that there will be some changes in the future to how commission is paid. And so my recommendation to you, if you work with a lot of buyers, or even if you work with one buyer, is that you learn what the buyer broker agreement is, and that you start being a professional, sitting down and having the buyer hire you as their agent, the same way you would have the seller hire you as their listing agent.
And Sarah, for those that are watching that may not be KW agents, are you open to, if someone reaches out to you with a question on these kind of things? Like, would you give them the 5-second rundown on what that is? Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Cooperating broker compensation. So cooperating broker shall be paid. You're going to put what your buyer's offer is. So this is really important, guys. There is a cooperating broker compensation that is offered inside of the MLS. Mm-hmm. And that compensation has to be something, but there is no set price that it needs to be. So anybody out there who's saying like, oh, well, they should be offering this, we call that price fixing, and that's actually illegal. The MLS does require that you share in compensation. It is part of the agreement, right? The MLS is literally like, this is our sandbox and we're going to play well with each other in it. But sharing is $1. And so if the offer of cooperation is $1 in the MLS, but let's say your buyer has a buyer broker agreement with you, and let's say that buyer broker agreement is for, we'll say, anywhere from 2 to 3%. So I'm just going to go with 2.5 here for the purposes of this recording. Mm-hmm. The buyer is making this offer. The buyer is allowed to say, I want to ask the seller to pay your commission, and you're going to do that, putting 2.5 in here. So remember, everything you put forth to the seller is negotiable, which means listing agents, read the whole contract before you present it to your client.
Yes. We should say that again. The whole contract.
The whole contract, not just a part of it.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Awesome. Good to know. Okay. As we keep moving down the contract here, we've landed in an attorney approval line. And just so you know, when working with like the Anna Smith team, I don't know how other lenders do it, but we don't wait on attorney approval to start the mortgage process. We keep rolling because we're just going to assume we're going to get that attorney approval, and why waste a day or two on the mortgage process waiting for the attorney? So we just get going. So to us, the attorney approval only matters if we're suddenly no longer in contract. So for Sarah, on your end, what do you have advice-wise for real estate folks over here?
All right. So when you're writing contracts, and especially if you write an offer and then all of a sudden it goes to multiple offer, and then congratulations, your client got it. Woo! I know. So what you want to do is take a look at your dates, right? You get the phone call, your client got it. if your date is, I don't know, today, the day you were notified that you got the house, you're going to want to say, hey, let's change that. And you either say, why don't you go ahead and cross it off, put a date on there, and we'll have everybody initial it. Or alternatively, because personally I hate cross-offs, say, look, I'm just going to update page 3. I'll have my client's initial and I'll get that back over to you. It should be 3 business days. The attorneys would like it to be 3 business days. Please do not put the words 3 business days. You want to know why?
Ooh, yes.
You would think that everybody would have an agreement of what a business day is and what a business day is not. But we don't. So we have a holiday coming up really soon that falls on a Tuesday.
Yes.
And Monday is not the holiday observed. Tuesday is the holiday observed.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you there's a lot of people who are not working on Monday, and there are people who will make the argument that that is not a business day.
Yes.
And so then it becomes confusing as to what the date actually is. So personally, I like to put a date on there, which just means that you need to be aware of it.
You said something about cross-offs, and I don't remember what we said on our part 1, but cross-offs, if you cross stuff off, everybody has to initial it. Even if it's the dumbest cross-off ever. Even if it's like the cross-off doesn't even matter. If it's crossed off, everybody's got to initial it from your favorite lender. Thanks. Sorry.
I'm just thinking of a cross-off that just happened that was a misspelling of the seller's name, and thinking that I need to send that around for everybody's initials, huh?
Probably. It'll depend, but it would save you time before it goes to the lender to just have it initialed, and then it doesn't have to get sent back or whatnot. But also, here's the thing, guys. And maybe people aren't aware of this. Every lender is a little different, but not just every lender is a little different. For example, I just had a contract bounced back yesterday because they put the personal property in line item, 8 or whatever. I can't even remember what line item it was in. Doesn't matter. They bound the personal property with the contract. We learned in part 1 that's a no. We don't want to do that. So some underwriters at my own company will allow us to give the property no value and circulate the addendum that the property has no value. This particular underwriter wanted it completely struck from the contract and addendum supplied. So, again, every lender and every underwriter is an individual in how retentive they want to be with that particular contract that day. So the better the contract comes, the easier that it will go through without us having to ask and pester you for silly stuff.
Yeah. And since you can't figure out who the underwriter is or where they are as an agent, which means you can't send them cookies or flowers to brighten their day.
I wish.
The thing that will brighten their day is having a beautifully well-written contract that they're able to work through as quickly and as painlessly as possible.
Exactly. Awesome. I apologize for going off on a tangent on that one. Do we have anything else we want to say about attorney approval?
I think yes, actually. So this is really important, guys. When the contract goes in for attorney review, if one attorney makes a single change to this contract, which by the way, they're going to, right? They're definitely going to change paragraph 23, 24 about all notices can be sent in an email format. Paragraph 23, right the first time. So saying that emails are an acceptable form of communication, because I have literally had agents call me and say, Sarah, what's a facsimile? Because we're all like beyond facsimiles at this point.
And that's a fax machine, by the way.
It's a fax. I know. For those of you that don't. So they're going to change that at the very least. The minute they send over that letter that says we're changing something, attorney review is wide open. Mm-hmm. The minute a change is made to it, unless that change is accepted and countersigned by the other side, attorney review is actually wide open. Most of the time, those attorney review letters do not say you must accept this by such and such a date, or if this is considered canceled, null and void. They'll generally say if these changes are not acceptable, the purchaser reserves all rights or the seller reserves all rights. What that means is they reserve their right to cancel. However, once that letter is sent, that is open. And the reason for that is if you really think about it, let's say that attorney review let's say we went to contract on something over the weekend. We happen to be recording this on a Wednesday. So Wednesday would be 3 business days. So let's say that we have attorney review that's up at the end of the day today on a transaction. And let's say that neither the buyer's agent nor the seller's agent have sent a letter at this point. And let's say at 4:59, one of them sends a letter and it so grossly materially changes the contract, right? Like, they're going to accept $100,000 less for this house. And that comes from the buyer side. And let's just pretend that like attorney review just closes out on that date. The fact that nobody responded to that letter, but that letter was received, would adjust the purchase price by $100,000. And clearly we're not, that's like
no. Yes.
That is in a crazy example that literally would never happen, but that's the reason why, right? Because you can't send over changes at the last minute. I mean, what if the other lawyer went home at 4:55 because they had to let their dog out?
Right. Possible.
Right. So, so that is why anytime there's a change, it just leaves it wide open, which is why agents, it is so, so important that you are tracking your dates and you are tracking these letters. And please, for the love of God, read the attorney review letter.
Do people really not read it? Is that really a thing? I don't even know why I'm asking. That was a dumb question. Do lenders really ask dumb questions sometimes? Yes, sometimes. Awesome. So talk to me about line 20, the condition of the premises. This seems pretty basic to me. But it does,
right?
Yes.
You would think that it's pretty basic. So have you ever seen properties that are listed right in the listing that says this property is being sold as is?
Oh, yes. All the time. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, would it surprise you to know that all properties are sold as is in New York State?
One, to be fair, one would assume, I don't know what the listing agent is trying to get out of that. Are they trying to get out of like negotiating inspections, or what's the point?
What they're trying to say is my seller's not going to make any repairs, or my seller's not going to give any credits. And yet I actually think that that's and this is just like a side note thing. I think that's a huge disservice to the seller. Less so in this market, but even so in this market, because buyers want the ability to look at a property and see if there are items that would be of a concern to them. And then even when there are items that are a concern, lots of times buyers still love the property and want to buy it. They just are looking for a solution. And so if you start out the conversation with, we're not having a conversation. What was that from the 90s? Like, talk to the hands.
Talk to the hands. The face don't understand. Man, I miss the 90s.
So good.
I miss the 90s.
The 90s.
Oh, gosh. Interesting.
You start the conversation like that, there's no conversation.
Right.
And so I do think that, from my personal perspective, listing a property as is superfluous. And so therefore, because all properties sell as is, so therefore don't do it. Yeah. And deading a conversation before it even starts is, it's not healthy for the conversation or the relationship. Absolutely.
And while we're here talking about it, I don't think we talked about this last time, and we may have to end up doing this as a part 3, Sarah. This might be a 3-part doozy, because I don't know if we can get through inspections in 13 minutes and the rest of it.
So, I can promise you we can't.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we're going to have part 3 about the inspections, but I want to harp on this for a hot second. Not that I'm harping. It's good information. Like, if you want to be the best real estate agent and you want to go out and win more offers and you want your life to be more efficient so you can close more business, Sarah and I know what we're talking about. Like, we're really genuinely trying to help you to do that. While we're talking about as-is properties, I need to probably do a whole nother YouTube training on what to watch out for FHA, VA, and government lending for the appraisal. And
let's go right into the inspection one. I feel like we can do that.
We could probably do that and just get out some basics. And I actually have a whole handbook of appraisal know-hows, like distances for FHA. Like, I can email it to you. So if you need that, please let us know. And I will get you taken care of. But we want to make sure that when you're looking at a property, you know what to kind of keep your eye out for. Whereas, a lot of these properties that say as is are maybe needing some hefty repairs, possibly. Those are probably not going to be great for any kind of government lending like FHA, VA, or USDA. So just throwing that out there.
Stated that, I would say maybe. I would say maybe, because you have to remember that anybody that puts selling the property as is, that is just inserted information that is opinion-based information by the agent that's typically given to them by their seller. So it's only as good as the person putting it in. Let's talk
about that for a second too. Like, I say this to since we have a few minutes, since we're going to do a part 3, I say this to my borrowers as well. They're like, well, the taxes are listed right there in the MLS. Well, yeah, but that's inputted by a human. So depending on how good that human is at calculating tax bills will mean how accurate those actual tax bills are. Guys, if you can list properties, Sarah, do you look up actual tax bills for your listings?
God, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then I attach them.
Beautiful. So
the bill.
If you want to improve the entire real estate community, listing agents, by a long way, having copies of the tax bills, not putting $3,000 estimated because that's what the seller told you they pay, having the tax bills, immensely helpful. Also, speaking of, I have a whole list of links that can help you to pull tax bills on your own as well. But the surprise tax boost, it can make or break a mortgage transaction. So like if you say, oh, the taxes are $5,000 and they include combat veteran and senior exemption, and the taxes are actually $8,000, my borrower may no longer qualify for that. And I
have some exciting news for you.
Ooh, exciting. Please tell me.
It's going to be exciting for you and exciting for me, and hopefully exciting for the majority of people who are watching this. So the MLS is committed to, I know it feels like, guys, oh my God, the MLS, they're so nitpicky. Well, what it really is that they are committed to there being great data out there, because the better the data, the better that we can be as agents, the better decisions that our buyers can make, and the better that we can show to sellers, like, hey, here's the value of your property as it's positioned in the market today, right? So we need all those things. Like when you're doing comp structure, like CMA, you need to know what the taxes on the property down the street are. They're not automatically the same. And so taxes are going to be listed in the MLS without exemptions.
How are they going to pull
How
are they going to pull that off? Sarah, how are they going to pull it off? Do we know?
With exemptions is not going to be an option in there anymore. It is going to be a requirement that they say without exemptions. And so y'all, when you get a correction email from the MLS, please know this is a correction email. It doesn't mean someone reported you. It doesn't mean somebody doesn't like you. And sometimes they just are going through to make sure that our data is good. That's so that we can all do good things in this business, right? Yeah. And so they're going to send you a correction and they're going to say you have 72 hours to fix it. So you always get 72 hours to fix a data entry problem. And so they're going to send it to you. They're going to say, please fix this. You have 72 hours to fix it. And sometimes they'll even fix it for you. Unlikely with the taxes, but like if you misappropriate the multifamily is a big thing right now, where people are calling it a multifamily, but it's really a 2-family. So it goes under a duplex. So they'll fix stuff like that quick for you. And then they'll ask you if the taxes are incorrect, to put in the correct taxes without exemptions. And so guys, what that does mean is that if you are on the MLS and you see something, please say something. Please. That does not make you mean. It doesn't make you reporting anybody. It's a little correction button. You're going to send it in. The MLS is going to thank you for it. They're going to let the agent know that it needs to be corrected. And they are not going to say, Sarah D'Angelo reported you, because she doesn't like you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You get it. You know, I don't get my correction emails and go, oh my God, somebody doesn't like me.
No.
I think, thank you for catching that, because I am entering a lot of things in a lot of places, and I'm a human being and I make mistakes. Exactly. So I'm so grateful that you caught that and pointed that out to me so that I can get that fixed.
I wish everybody felt that way. The taxes thing will be huge. And again, until that's in place, or even when it's in place, making sure we have that accurate information on the MLS is so huge. So I can make sure that my clients know, it makes it makes a huge difference in qualifying for some people. I've never done so many high debt to income ratio loans in my life. So it's just very important. Okay.
And I think too, just to add one more piece to that, like be aware if the property is in a village. If the property is in a village, they have 3 tax bills, not 2, 3.
Yeah. Exactly. I think of like Ballston Spa is the first one that pops in my head with fairly large.
Round Lake.
There you go. Like, it's so important, such a big deal. So that way we can, elevate. A rising tide raises all ships, right? So, the better that we can be, with those kind of idiosyncrasies, the better we all can be. So we covered a lot today, Sarah, before we wrap up part 2 of 3-part. I mean, I feel like we could do a daily podcast of it could be, weekly podcast of crazy stuff going on in the land of real estate, I feel. But we started here at 8, rocked all the way down through line item. Where'd we end up here? Condition of promises. So our next portion of the series will be all about inspections and below, which I feel like we have plenty to talk about there on Sarah's end. And we will get that wrapped for you probably in the next few weeks. So anything else you wanted to add, Sarah, the last couple of minutes of the call?
Gosh, I think we covered a lot of things, and super excited to come back and do the inspection piece. I know that piece is, and I'm going to send you another form for that too. That piece is really important, especially in the market today, right now, with so many buyers, so few properties, to really know how to function inside of that inspection contingency section. And also know how to have the conversations with the clients on both sides of the transaction.
I'm looking forward to learning some there because I really, and very rightly so, I'm pretty far removed from the inspection process and all that stuff. I'm always like, I don't want to know, don't tell me. But it'll be a really great interview. And Sarah, we appreciate you so much. We know you're busy, so I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. And I'll get at you about scheduling our third one. Okay.
And thanks for having me, Anna, and I will see you soon.
Awesome. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.